Not, she replied. Of course not, he inquired. And you don't have any contact with Mr. Black Scythe? She replied, No, I don't. Mr. Black Scythe is someone I met in the other world. As she waved her hands in a flustered manner, Aged Man No Gay finally believed her. And he said, I'm sorry. From the first time I saw you, you always seemed to be with Mr. Black Scythe, so I thought you two were a couple. I'm glad that's not the case. Minjuri's expression turned subtle at the word glad, but Aged Man No Gay didn't seem to notice, and he added, Then the partner who went to Nigeria with Mr. Black Scythe wasn't you? Minjuri said, I've never been to Nigeria in my life. He said, I see. That's a relief. Seemingly upset by the glad comment, Minjuri started criticizing the building. But why is the house so old? I was expecting a grand cult building. He said, This house belonged to my late grandmother. We demolished some walls to make it more spacious inside. As Minjuri looked for something to say, feeling awkward, people started coming in one by one. They were all unfamiliar faces, but their appearance made it clear they were players. Soon the room filled with over 10 people. Then a large group entered all at once. It was none other than Joe Yong-ho's gang. Joe Yong-ho said, Hello, we've all come to join the Grim Reaper cult. Aged Man No Gay said, Oh, welcome. With Joe Yong-ho's group entering, the previously empty space suddenly became crowded. Ryu said to himself, Joe Yong-ho's real face is the same. As Ryu was thinking that, he encountered an unexpected acquaintance. One said, Isn't that celebrity Seo Arin? Another said, Wow, I never thought I'd see Seo Arin in person. Being a rising star, many people recognized her immediately. Then Aged Man No Gay said, Oh, Ms. Seo Arin, you came? Seo Arin inquired, Mr. Aged Man? He smiled and said, Yes, I look just like the one in the other world, right? You said you'd definitely come. And here you are. I believed you, she said. A promise is a promise. Seo Arin, who was answering shyly, suddenly looked in Ryu's direction. She was surprised and said, Oh, Mr. Ryu Min? Seo Arin was about to say prophet, but quickly corrected herself. Ryu gave her an awkward smile and said, Hello, she asked. What brings you here? Are you interested in Mr. Black Scythe too? Ryu said, No, I just came to have a look around, she said. I never thought I'd see you here, Ryu said. Me neither, then she inquired. But the person next to you looks very familiar. When she murmured that while looking at Minjuri, Aom Jun-seok interrupted and said, That's Mr. Minjuri. She was shocked and inquired, Minjuri? The buffer? Minjuri said, Yes, I'm Minjuri, Seo Arin said. Ah, nice to meet you. No wonder. Your face in the other world looks quite similar. Seo Arin, who said that, subtly approached Minjuri and whispered, I have a question. Minjuri inquired. Yes? Seo Arin asked. Do you keep in touch with Mr. Black Scythe in real life? Minjuri replied. No, I've never met him. Seo Arin's face turned disappointed and said, Oh, really? To change the mood, Ryu asked, Ms. Arin, where are Manager An and President Ma? Didn't they come with you? She said. I suggested it, but they weren't interested, so I came alone. Ryu nodded at her response, and he said to himself, Of course they see Black Scythe as a rival and are wary of him. No wonder they didn't come. Then Minjuri asked in surprise, How do you know actress Seo Arin? Ryu replied, She's my neighbor. She lives upstairs from me. She's also an artist with the company I invested in. Minjuri stared at Seo Arin silently for a while. Reading her thoughts, Ryu sensed she was slightly wary, and he said to himself, Don't worry, Juri. I'm too old to date anyone else. Looking around, Ryu noticed there were now close to 30 people gathered, all chatting away, and he said to himself, A lot of people have gathered, and the purpose of this gathering is probably just to attract more believers. When he checked the wall clock, the agreed meeting time had long passed. Feeling it was time to start, Aged Man No Gay stepped onto a makeshift platform, and he said, Hello, I am Heo Tai Seok, the founder and leader of the Grim Reaper cult. My nickname is Aged Man No Gay, and I am currently a level 45 warlock. As he began to speak, the murmurs died down and a calm silence fell over the room. And he added, Thank you for coming to our first meeting as a cult. As you all know, this cult is a group that idolizes Mr. Black Scythe. First, let me tell you how I came to admire Mr. Black Scythe. Though his story was long, No one took their eyes off aged man No-Gay. His voice had a magnetic quality and sincerity. Ryu was quietly impressed by this new side of aged man No-Gay, and he said to himself, he's unexpectedly good at preaching. Ryu thought aged man No-Gay was an introvert, but that was not the case. And when it came to Black Scythe, he spoke fluently, transforming into a different person. Aged man No-Gay added, Mr. Black Scythe has bestowed many insights into my life. I firmly believe he is the savior who will end the despair of this world and the only light. I discovered that many people share this belief. That is why I founded the Grim Reaper cult. In the middle of his sermon, an annoying sound drew everyone's attention to a man on crutches entering the room. Ryu's eyes widened at the unexpected figure, and he inquired, Ju Seong-tak, the serial killer Ju Seong-tak, who competed for the second and third rankings with Heavenly Demon, a guy who had lost his limbs and was now wearing prosthetic arms and legs. Ryu said to himself, why is he here? He might have seen the promotional post and come, being a Player Haven member. But I don't think he's the type to follow Black Scythe. Ryu read his thoughts, suspecting he had another motive. Ryu said to himself, sure enough, that bastard, he's here to find me. More precisely, he was here to find Hwang Yong-min. He wanted to take revenge on Hwang Yong-min, who had made him a cripple, and he came here thinking he might find him at this player gathering. Indeed, he had no interest in Black Scythe at all. Then aged man No-Gay said, a new believer has joined us. Welcome. I am Heo Tai-seok, the leader of the Grim Reaper cult. Ju Seong-tak scanned the room with cold eyes, not responding. His mind was occupied with one thought, revenge. And he said to himself, one of these people might be the bastard who did this to me. Ju Seong-tak's rage was solely directed at Hwang Yong-min. Aom Jun-seok, worried about his hostile demeanor, placed a warm hand on his back and inquired, are you all right? You don't look well. But Ju Seong-tak slapped his hand and shouted, don't touch me, I'll kill you. Ju Seong-tak's harsh reaction left Aom Jun-seok with an awkward smile, and he had to back off, and people reacted differently to his behavior. Some clicked their tongues in disapproval, while others looked at him with pity, thinking he must be going through a hard time. Reading the looks and atmosphere, Ju Seong-tak's anger grew stronger, like adding logs to a fire, and he said to himself, damn bastards, do they see me as a pitiful person? Am I pathetic to them? I'm already pissed off. Should I just kill them all? He had every right to be angry. In such a situation, one could feel like killing someone. Ryu said to himself, the problem is, that guy is a serial killer who easily kills people, and he might not just think it, but actually act on it. And if he uses corpse explosion in this cramped place, there will be a lot of casualties, and everyone could die in an instant, as corpse explosion was that powerful of a skill. Ryu was worried and asked himself, should I just leave this time bomb-like guy alone, or should I stop him? The decision didn't take long, as Ryu Min sensed the warped thoughts in his mind. Ju Seong-tak was saying to himself, damn it, he's not here. I checked every face, but the bastard who did this to me isn't here. It was a waste of time, damn it. Should I just kill these annoying bastards and leave? Judging by his tone, he was serious. Ryu said to himself, it's dangerous to fight in here. So Ryu decided to lure him outside. Then he whispered to Minjuri, I'm going to the bathroom for a bit. She said, okay, hurry back. Everyone else was focused on aged man No-Gay's sermon, unaware of Ju Seong-tak's intentions. Ju Seong-tak said to himself, if I quickly kill 3 people to secure the corpses, then use the soul storage skill I recently learned to enhance corpse explosion, I could kill everyone here. Even though there were many people, they were only of a similar level to him, and they wouldn't have the time or ability to react to a sudden ambush. Ju Seong-tak added, if I do it right, I can kill them all and leave cleanly. In fact, Ju Seong-tak had little to gain from killing people. At best, he could store souls and use the enhanced skill without searching for souls separately. But despite the risk of facing many, Ju Seong-tak was leaning toward killing everyone just because he didn't like the pitiful looks they gave him. And he said to himself, bastards, do they think I'm pathetic because I'm crippled? Wait and see. You'll all regret underestimating this so disabled person. Heh heh. Thinking about the horrified expressions people would make after corpse explosion, he couldn't help but smile grimly. As he was grinning and deciding who to kill first, his face suddenly froze. It was none other than the man he had been searching for. standing at the gate. He said, You bastard! In fact, Ryu, pretending to head to the restroom, quickly transformed into Hwang Yongmin. He disguised himself with low-level equipment, ensuring no one would suspect it was actually him. And he said to himself, that bastard Ju Xiong-tak will throw his crutches and come running the moment he sees me. Having finished his preparations, Ryu lingered near the main gate. Soon, he locked eyes with Ju Xiong-tak, who said, You bastard! Ju Xiong-tak's face contorted with rage as he charged towards Ryu Min with murderous intent. As expected, though he didn't throw away his crutches, and he said, Finally, you bastard, I can't wait to grind you to dust! Ju Xiong-tak, equipping his gear as he ran, threw his crutches. But Ryu Min, using his rune of foresight, had already foreseen this move. His plan was to paralyze Ryu with fear and then stab him through the neck. Ryu said to himself, Not a bad strategy, but I'm not falling for it. Ryu didn't dodge the crutch, but lightly deflected it. The crutch flew away, obstructing Ju Xiong-tak's vision. Taking advantage of this, Ryu Min closed the distance and punched Ju Xiong-tak in the face. Ju Xiong-tak crumpled to the ground, a few teeth broken. Ryu lightly kicked him in the side. As Ju Xiong-tak writhed in pain, Ryu grabbed his hair and slammed his head into the ground repeatedly. 1, 2, 3 times. Ju Xiong-tak's forehead split open, blood flowing, leaving him barely conscious. Then Ryu said, Hey, Ju Xiong-tak, get it together, or do you want me to smash your head even more? Ju Xiong-tak did not respond to Ryu, but cursed Ryu in his heart. You bastard, you'll regret this. Ryu smiled and said to himself, Good, he's conscious enough to think. Then Ryu pressed down on Ju Xiong-tak's head to prevent him from casting the curse of fear, and he said, You bastard, I crippled you to make you think straight, and you still come at me like this. Do you have a death wish? Still not learned your lesson? Why do you keep coming at me when you clearly can't win? Do you think you'll suddenly get stronger if you charge at me again? Huh? Can't even use a single skill before getting knocked down. You think reckless charging will make you stronger? Know your place, idiot? Or do you miss my beatings that much? Want me to grant your wish? Where should I cut next? Want me to gouge out an eye this time? Even without reading his mind, Ryu could see Ju Xiong-tak trembling with rage, and he said to himself, It's humiliating, huh? He's got a lot of pride. Just a bit more taunting, and Ryu would likely get rid of him as intended. Then Ryu said, Come on, say something. What should I do? Start the surgery as I see fit? But Ju Xiong-tak did not respond to Ryu. Ryu added, Not saying anything, huh? Boring. Just get lost, you bum. Ju Xiong-tak silently got up, grabbed his crutches, and limped away. Ryu taunted him as he walked away, saying, Geez, look at him move quickly when told to get lost. Guess he wants to live after all? But Ju Xiong-tak didn't look back. He just kept walking like a defeated soldier. Ryu said, If I see you in front of me again, I'll kill you for real. Got it? Ju Xiong-tak left the gate and soon disappeared from sight. Ryu chuckled and said to himself, Humiliated in front of people like that, he won't show up for a while. As Ryu noticed the sharp glares from the members of the Grim Reaper cult aimed at him, he said, Sorry for fighting suddenly in your sacred place. As you can see, that guy attacked first. Aom Jun-seok asked, Do you know him? At Aom Jun-seok's question, Ryu nodded vaguely and said, I know him, but don't worry. He's just a crazy guy. Ryu then locked eyes with Seo Arin, who was glaring at him with sudden anger. He realized his mistake, and he said to himself, Oh, right, I'm still in Hwang Yongmin's form. In fact, Hwang Yongmin had ambushed Seo Arin early on, so they had a bad relationship. Ryu said to himself, I shouldn't stay here long. Ryu never intended to stay in this form anyway. So he turned around, grumbling, Carry on with your business. Sorry for causing trouble. Aom Jun-seok inquired, Weren't you here to join our cult? Ryu replied, Yes, but I'll join next time. Leaving that with Aom Jun-seok, Ryu moved to a secluded area out of sight and reverted to his original form. After using invisibility, he snuck up behind Minjuri and tapped her shoulder. Minjuri said, Ah, you scared me. When did you get here? He said, Just now. I was watching the fight from over there. She inquired, You saw it too? The fight between those two. Ryu said, Calling it a fight is a bit much. It was one-sided. Minjuri said, "True, it was a one-sided beating. I was seriously debating whether to intervene or not, seeing someone with injured limbs getting beaten like that," Ryu said to himself. From an outsider's perspective, it must have looked like I was mercilessly beating up a defenseless cripple, but some might understand. Ju Xiong-tak had been the one to draw his weapon first. Then Ryu glanced at Seo Arin. She looked troubled, probably due to seeing Huang Yongmin earlier, and he said to himself, "She's debating whether to go after Huang Yongmin for revenge. In fact, summoners only shine in the mid to late game when they have many summoned creatures. Seo Arin, now, could probably fight anyone without fear, and taking revenge on Huang Yongmin should be a piece of cake for her, if he were still alive, that is." Ryu added, "Anyway, Ju Xiong-tak, that guy seems like he'll cause trouble." Though Ryu had succeeded in sending him out, the threat wasn't eliminated. Ju Xiong-tak might control his anger in front of the strong, but he'd likely take it out on the weak without hesitation. And knowing Ju Xiong-tak's nature, that's probably what he'll do. As Ryu pondered the danger, Aged Man No-Ge led everyone inside and said, "All right, everyone, the show's over. Let's go back inside and finish our discussion." Following Aged Man No-Ge, Ryu glanced back. He couldn't help but feel uneasy about the ticking time bomb Ju Xiong-tak had become. On the other hand, Ju Xiong-tak, limping, returned home in a sorry state. As he fumed, he suddenly felt the pain in his ribs. Although he had used emergency treatment on the way, it seemed it wasn't enough to mend the bones. His head was throbbing and his jaw ached, all reminders of the beating he had received. And he shouted, "Bastard! I'll make sure to repay today's humiliation." Naturally, he had no intention of letting it go. He was the type who couldn't rest until he avenged a wrong. Ever since he killed his parents, he had resolved to live a life unrestrained by anything. He added, "I shouldn't have rushed in so recklessly. I got too excited the moment I saw him. But damn it, the more I think about it, the angrier I get." Punching the wall, he left a dent. Though he lacked limbs, he was still a player who had surpassed humans. He had enough confidence to win, and the odds were in his favor. And he said, "If only I could have used my skills, it would have been over." His original plan was to cast the Curse of Fear and then stab with a dagger. But Ryu had struck his face first, giving him no chance to use his skills. He added, "This taught me a lesson. Engaging him in close combat is dangerous." Clearly, Ryu had a warrior class with increased strength, while Ju Xiong-tak was more of a mage. It was common knowledge that mages should keep their distance from warriors. Ju Xiong-tak said, "Instead of the Curse of Fear, I should have used Corpse Explosion. That would have been more effective." Ju Xiong-tak now realized that using Corpse Explosion had a better chance of success, and he said, "I won't lose next time. I'll prepare thoroughly and kill him." In fact, Ju Xiong-tak didn't know the bastard's name or username, but he could find a way. Knowing that he was interested in the Grim Reaper cult, he could visit the cult again to gather information about him. And he said, "If I find out his real name, I can track him with Trace. And if the leader refused to reveal this information due to privacy concerns, I'd torture him until he did." As he chuckled to himself, the doorbell rang. He shouted, "Damn it! Who the hell is it now? Can't they be reasonable?" Limping to the door, Ju Xiong-tak opened it to find a burly man in his 40s with a scornful expression. Ju Xiong-tak inquired, "What?" The man said, "Hey, is that how you greet someone? Is this for real?" He inquired, "What's the matter?" The man said to himself, "Geez," a young punk speaking so rudely. Though the 40-year-old gangster Kim Jong-seon felt like punching him, he held back. Youngsters nowadays think they own the world just because they're players. He assumed the cripple in front of him was likely a player too. Then Ju Xiong-tak inquired, "What's the matter?" The man replied, "I live downstairs. Earlier, I heard noises like someone banging the wall. Can you keep it down? I was napping and it woke me up." Ju Xiong-tak stared at him in disbelief and he inquired, "What? Napping?" But Kim Jong-seon turned and left and said, "Anyway, keep it down." Hearing the door shut downstairs, Ju Xiong-tak became angry and he said, "Damn it! Did that pig just mock me?" Being disrespected by a non-player was infuriating. Shutting the door, Ju Xiong-tak returned to the living room, sighing in frustration, and he said, "What? I disturbed your nap? Do I have to cater to your nap schedule, you bastard?" Infuriated, Ju Xiong-tak said, "Fine. Since you're awake, let me help you stay awake." He then began stomping the floor repeatedly. and he shouted, "How's that, bastard? Awake yet?" Then the doorbell rang again. Hearing the doorbell, his anger peaked, and he said to himself, "That bastard again? Do they think I'm an easy target because I'm disabled? Fine, I'll tear your guts out." Equipping his gear, Ju Seong-tak grabbed his dagger and limped to the door. But the person ringing the bell wasn't the downstairs neighbor. He was... The guy who had humiliated him at the cult was now at his door smiling and waving. Ryu smirked and said, "Hey, long time no see," he shouted. You fucking bastard!" Ju Song-tak, who rolled into the house from Ryu Min's kick, hurriedly steadied himself, and with eyes wide open, he cast the fear spell. Curse of Fear, but just like before, it was useless, and the system message appeared. The opponent has resisted the fear, failed to cast the Curse of Fear. Then Ryu closed the front door with a smirk and said, "Don't be so scared, I only came to talk." But to Ju Seong-tak it felt like a sneer and ridicule, and he couldn't help but get angry, and he shouted, "Bullshit! Talk? You said you'd kill me if we met again, and now you want to talk." Ryu smiled and said, "Oh, did my words hurt you that much? Sorry, but in the cult you attacked first without warning. Can't you at least admit it?" he said. "That's because you..." But he couldn't finish his words, as another kick sent Ju Seong-tak sprawling across the living room floor. Ryu said, "Blaming others like usual. Even after what happened at the cult, you still haven't come to your senses." Then Ryu said to himself, expecting anything from a murderer who had killed dozens even before becoming a player, was too much. "I kept him alive because his traits were useful, but it seems I need to eliminate any potential threats." Seeing Ju Seong-tak glare at him as if he wanted to kill him, Ryu felt reassured that he had followed him, and he said, "All right, I'll give you a chance for revenge," Ju Seong-tak inquired. "What?" Without responding further, Ryu manipulated the system window in the air. Soon, an unfamiliar message appeared before Ju Seong-tak's eyes. "The opponent has challenged the player with the nickname Dumb Fools to a duel. Duel type, non-lethal simple sparring. Opponent's victory condition, touching the opponent 100 times. Dumb Fools victory condition, touching even a single hair of the opponent. Victory reward, the loser becomes the winner's slave for life and obeys all commands. Opponent's penalty, all equipment and skill usage prohibited. Dumb Fool's penalty, none. Do you accept the duel under the above conditions? YN." As Ju Seong-tak, who had never received a duel request before, looked confused, Ryu kindly explained. He needed the guy to accept the challenge to force his actions. And he said, "It's a duel function, but it's simple. If you touch me even once, you win. Conversely, if I touch you 100 times, I win. The loser becomes the slave of the winner. How about it? Simple, right?" Ju Seong-tak inquired. "If I touch you even once, I win," Ryu replied. "Yes, but I won't use any equipment or skills." Ju Seong-tak examined the system window again and pondered, and he said to himself, "Even if it's just a hair, if I touch him, I can make him my slave." It was a bet too good to pass up. The problem was whether to proceed with the bet. Then Ju Seong-tak inquired, "Are you really going to duel with these conditions?" Ryu said. "Can't you see?" he said. "How can I trust you? You could break your promise." Ryu said. "How could I break it, you idiot? The system forces actions just like it does with Dominion." Ju Seong-tak was silent, and judging by the system window, it seemed trustworthy, and he seemed to have a chance, and he said to himself, "Even though I'm a mage type, could I not touch him once while he touches me 100 times? And if I could cast fear once, the game would be over." Of course, he'd never successfully cast it on him before. But if it comes to it, he can use corpse explosion, and there are many other methods. Even though his job was a mage, he hadn't just increased his intelligence, as there were many occasions where he needed to fight in close quarters or run away, so he had put some points into strength and agility as well. And no matter how fast the guy was, he was confident he could touch him once. Then Ryu asked, "So, are you in or not?" Ju Seong-tak inquired. "What's the reason for this sudden proposal?" Ryu chuckled and said, "I feel sorry for you. It's pitiful seeing you struggle despite your lack of skills, so I'm giving you a chance, even giving myself a penalty. Didn't you realize?" Ryu added. "A guy who claims to have put points into intelligence can't even think this through. Your head isn't just for decoration, you know." It was humiliating for someone ranked second or third in the entire district to be laughed at like this, and he said to himself, "This bastard." Then Ryu inquired, "So, are you in or not?" He replied, "Let's do it, you bastard." Then the system message appeared. The duel has been established. The duel between the two will begin in 10 seconds. An enraged Ju Seong-tak took the bait without realizing it was a fight he had almost no chance of winning. Then Ryu's lips curled into a cruel smile and he said to himself, "That's another slave for me." On the other hand, Ryu Won, who had nothing else to do at home, went to meet his friend whom he met online. In fact, he got along well with his gaming friends. No matter what he did, they responded positively, never got angry, and were good at games. Even on days when he felt down and stressed, playing games with those friends lifted his spirits. And unlike the classmates who bullied and ostracized him, they were true friends to him, at least until he met them offline. When they met, the guy inquired, "Are you Ryu Won?" Ryu Won said, "Yeah." "Are you Taiwan?" the guy said. "Finally, we meet. Nice to meet you, you bastard." Before he could react to the sudden profanity, Tae-won put his arm around his shoulders, and the typical scent of a bully filled the air. Ryu Won inquired, Why are you doing this, Taiwan?" he said. "Don't use informal speech, you bastard. I'm 2 years older than you idiot." Ryu Won, "What? But in the game, you said we were the same age." He smiled and said, "I lied to get close to you. Now follow me. Let's go somewhere quiet." With a fishy smile, Tae-won led Ryu Won away. Ryu Won tried to resist, but it was impossible. The force was like having a boulder on his shoulder. Then he said to himself, "Now that I think about it, if he's 2 years older, could he be a player?" A player, and a veteran who survived up to the 10th round. His anxious thoughts were replaced by tension, as players were more dangerous than regular criminals, and judging by his actions, he seemed to have bad intentions. Ryu Won said to himself, I should have stayed home as my brother advised, but it was too late for regrets." Ryu Won was dragged away by someone he thought was a friend. The guy shouted, "Get in there, bastard!" Instead of a PC room, Ryu Won found himself in a dead-end alley, a place where thugs might smoke. What was he planning to do here? He didn't even want to think about it. Then he inquired, Why are you doing this, Tae-won?" The guy shouted, "Bastard, I told you not to use informal speech, and don't call my name so casually, it's disgusting." Ryu Won asked again, Why are you doing this?" But this time he got a slap. His vision flashed, and his head snapped to the side, and his cheek swelled. Then the guy said, "You bastard. Are you trying to die? Do you still think we're friends because I treated you nicely? Why am I doing this? Don't you know?" "Well, I guess you wouldn't. I acted pretty well, enduring my urge to tear you and your brother apart." He inquired, "My brother?" He had mentioned having a brother in the game, but hadn't gone into details. Naturally, he had never introduced him to his brother. And there was no connection, so there shouldn't be any reason for a grudge. Ryu Won inquired, "What did my brother do?" The guy laughed and said, "You still don't get it." Tae-won's mouth was smiling, but his eyes were fierce, the eyes of someone who genuinely wanted to kill. And he added, "Hey, you know Tae-gyu, right?" Ryu Won inquired. "Tae-gyu? Who is that?" Tae-won shouted. "Bong Tae-gyu, you bastard. Don't you remember? He was in your class. The one who ended up in the hospital after your brother beat him up 9 months ago." Ryu Won remembered now. Even though it hadn't been long, he had forgotten. The bully who made his school life a nightmare. His name was Bong Tae-gyu. Then Taiwan said, "Judging by your eyes, you remember now. I'm Bong Tae-gyu's brother, Bong Taiwan. Do you know how hard it was to find you? I even hired private detectives and went through all sorts of trouble, but I couldn't find you. If I had at least a photo, I could have used the tracking skill, but there wasn't a single one. Luckily, I managed to find your game ID, and now we meet like this," Ryu Won said. "Then, being friendly to me was all..." He laughed and said, "It was all an act, you bastard, to meet you offline. But every time I suggested meeting up, you always chickened out saying it was too dangerous to leave the house. Idiot." Now Ryu Won understood that the guy wasn't a gaming friend or anything. He was just a thug who approached him with a plan to take revenge on his brother. Then Tae-won inquired, "Your brother's name is Ryu Min, right? Is that bastard doing well, after breaking my brother's fingers and arms? He didn't die already, did he? I waited so long for my chance at revenge. Answer me, you bastard." Ryu Won zipped his lips shut tightly, and he said to himself, "There's no way I can tell him about my brother." While thinking about that, he got slapped. Bong Taiwan glared at him with a terrifying look and asked, Are you going to talk or not? Do you think I'm joking? Then he slapped him again and said, answer me. Is your brother alive? If you don't talk, I'll hit you again. Ryu-Wan said, He's dead, he inquired. Dead? Ryu-Wan nodded with a pained expression, acting. Saying his brother was dead was the only way to avoid bringing harm to him. Tae-Wan said, so he's dead, huh? There's no way he'd have survived to the 10th round without being as talented as me. Bong Tai-Wan nodded as if it made sense, and then looked conflicted, and he inquired, then what do I do now? I plan to lure him out and kill him using you, but if he's dead, revenge is impossible. He seemed to give up on revenge, and Ryu-Wan felt relieved, but only for a moment, and he said, there's no choice. If your brother's not here, I have to kill you. Ryu-Wan inquired. Well, what? He said. Why are you surprised? When an elder brother commits a crime, the younger brother must pay the price. Haven't you heard of guilt by association? As he turned his target to him, Ryu-Wan was shocked, and Bong Tai-Wan asked, even if you're lying, now's the time to come clean. Is your brother alive? Did you lie to protect him? But Ryu-Wan remained silent and did not respond. Bong Tai-Wan said, still not talking? Then I'll have to break your fingers and arms just like my brother and then snap your neck. Understand? So, speak. Where's your brother, Ryu-Min? As Ryu-Wan's trembling, his lips let out a small sigh, and he said, My brother is already dead. Bong Tai-Wan's face twisted in rage, and he shouted, You stubborn bastard, still lying! Still not talking? Fine. I'll start by breaking your fingers and then ask again. Ryu-Wan said, No, please! Just as Bong Tai-Wan was about to grab his finger, a young woman's voice made Bong Tai-Wan turn his head. A woman with a nasty grin was looking at them, and she said, What are you doing here? Bong Tai-Wan shouted, Mind your own business, bitch, Yamti said. I wasn't talking to you, bastard. Just as Bong Tai-Wan, shocked, was about to get angry, the woman's eyes glowed pink. Then, like a lifeless doll, Bong Tai-Wan's arms dropped. Ryu-Wan was puzzled and inquired, What's happening? But the woman's question confused him even more. As she asked, Are you okay, young master? She was speaking as if she knew him. Ryu-Wan inquired, Ye young master? Yamti ordered the guy to tell them about his plan from the beginning. Listening to the story from Bong Tai-Wan, Yamti clicked her tongue and said, Wow, he's persistent, pretending to be a gaming friend for months just for revenge. Ryu-Wan, who was listening beside her, couldn't help but be shocked, and he said to himself, No wonder he kept asking about my home address and my brother while we were playing games. But more shocking was the presence of a woman calling him young master. Then he inquired, what's your name? Yamti replied, Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet. You can call me Yamti, young master. He inquired, Yamti? She said, That's my nickname. As you can see, I'm a player. Don't I look like one? Ryu-Wan said, Oh, yes, Yamti inquired. Don't I look like I'm in my early 20s? Ryu-Wan said, Yes, you do. Yamti smiled and said, See, young master, you have a good eye. I've been taking care of myself. It's not plastic surgery, though, he inquired. So, have we met before? Why do you keep calling me young master? Yamti said. Oh, didn't I say? I'm an acquaintance of Ryu-Min. Ryu-Wan's eyes widened at the mention of his brother, and he asked himself, Did my brother have such an acquaintance? He added, Just as I made friends in the game, it seemed my brother had built a network of players in the other world. Well, I don't know about all of my brother's connections. Then Yamti explained how she came to be here with a friendly smile. And she said, Ryu-Min was worried when you said you were meeting a friend, so he asked me to follow you. That shows how much Ryu-Min trusts me, he said. Oh, I see. Knowing she was his brother's acquaintance finally put Ryu-Wan at ease, and he asked himself, Did my brother foresee this situation? Then he said, Thank you, Yam-T. You saved me. Yamti said, Hey, I didn't do anything. It was all thanks to Ryu-Min telling me to come here in advance. He smiled and said, I should thank my brother, too. Ryu-Wan, who had been grinning, looked at Bong Tai-Wan standing there dumbfounded, and he asked, So how did you do it? He's not the type to listen so easily. Yamti replied, It's my ability. I can charm people and make them my subordinates in an instant. Ryu-Wan nodded and said, Oh, I see. Realizing the situation, Ryu-Wan nodded and then asked, Are you really just my brother's acquaintance? You're not in a relationship with him? Yamti asked happily. Ah, does it look that way? He said, No, it's just that you keep treating me in this weird way even though you're not married to him. Yamti smiled and said, Whether we get married or not is uncertain. Future young brother. Ryo Wan was surprised and inquired. Sorry? Yamti laughed and said, I'm kidding. Then Yamti pushed the mind-controlled Bong Tae-wan forward and asked, By the way, young master, what do you want to do with this trash? Should I give you a knife? You need to vent your anger, he said. That's a bit too, Yamti said. Don't worry about consequences. We can clean up easily, and no one will care if a piece of trash like this dies. Are you just going to let him go after he tried to kill you? At least use him as a punching bag. Ryuan was scared and hesitant, and said, Well, I'm scared to hit someone. In fact, Ryuan had never hit anyone in his life. He had never felt anger or held a grudge against anyone. When he was hit, he just cowered and lowered his head. So naturally, he was scared. Yamti said to herself, even though they're brothers, the young master's personality is completely different from the master's, and while she didn't understand why he didn't want to punish him, Yamti decided to respect his wish. He was the future young brother after all, and she said, I'll respect your decision, young master, but we can't let him go. We need to inform Ryu Min and ask for his opinion. He said, Oh yes, do that. Then Yamti looked at the guy with contempt and said, Trash, stay quiet while I make a call. The guy said, Yes, master. Ryu Wan, who was curiously watching Bong Tai-wan behave like an obedient doll, glanced at Yamti, who was looking at her phone, and he said to himself, charming people, and making them subordinates. This is why they say players are dangerous. While he was thinking about how scary the ability was, Yamti suddenly looked up and asked, Young master, how old do you really think I am? On the other hand, Ju Seong-tak was breathing heavily after moving non-stop. He didn't even know how many minutes had passed. Ju Seong-tak's mind was filled with only one thought, to hit the bastard. But till now he couldn't, and he said to himself, that damn bastard, not getting caught even once. No matter how he swung his arms, kicked, faked, and tried everything, the guy dodged like a ghost. If he could touch that guy just once with his bare hands, it would be his victory. Then the system would make the guy his slave, and he added, once he becomes my slave, I'll make him beg for forgiveness and then kill him painfully. But things weren't going as he thought, and Ryu smirked and said, Why are you so slow? Move faster, he shouted. You damn bastard, Ryu taunted him, saying, Oh, you still have the energy to curse? If you have the strength to swear, save it and focus on hitting me. Chesk, chesk, Ju Seong-tak shouted, You son of bitch! In fact, Ryu deliberately taunted him to drain his stamina further, and even though their stat difference was enormous, Ryu was still in danger whenever Ju Seong-tak used the curse of fear. Ryu said to himself, If I get hit by it, I won't be able to move for 3.4 seconds, and due to the penalty of not being able to wear equipment, my resistance was very low, and with a base resistance of 15% and an additional 20% from the tower, the total effective resistance was only 32%. So there's a 68% chance I'll be affected by the curse of fear, and if it happens, I'll be unable to move for 3.4 seconds. And in a duel where a single mistake could mean defeat, not being able to move for 3.4 seconds was fatal. Therefore, whenever Ju Seong-tak attempted to cast the curse, Ryu would keep his distance. Ryu added, It's about time to end this. Avoiding Ju Seong-tak's punches, Ryu increased his touch count. And as he dodged, he touched Ju Seong-tak's body mockingly. The guy was frantic, but Ryu's touch count was almost complete, reaching 99. Ryu said to himself, One more touch, and I win. Just then, there was a loud banging on the front door, followed by voices from outside. It was the gangsters from the floor below, and the gangster shouted, Hey, you disabled bastard! Come out! Because of you, I can't take a nap, damn it! They had come up, unable to tolerate the noise anymore. The man shouted, Come out! Why aren't you coming out? What the hell are you doing making all that noise, you legless cripple? Come out! I don't care if you're a player, I'll kill you! Despite the gangsters shouting, Ju Seong-tak smiled, because their presence was a glimmer of hope in his dire situation. Then Ju Seong-tak quickly dashed to the front door to open it. Ryu, having anticipated his move, followed swiftly. But as soon as Ju Seong-tak looked at him, unfortunately, Ju Seong-tak's curse of fear hit him at that moment, and the system message appeared. You are now under the status effect, Fear. However, thanks to the distance he had kept, Ju Song-tak couldn't touch him immediately. Ju Song-tak opened the front door in the meantime, and the gangster said, finally opening the door, "Damn you, I told you to be quiet." But suddenly, a swiftly swung dagger pierced the throat of the gangster, Kim Jong-seon, and then was pulled out. Securing the corpse in an instant, Ju Seong-tak stepped into the hallway. Then Ju Seong-tak laughed and said, "Come here, bastard. The moment you get close, I'll explode this corpse." Ryu said, "This is annoying, but you know what?" At that moment, electric currents flowed through Ryu's body. And Ryu said, "Even if you explode the corpse, I can just dodge it." Ju Song-tak inquired, "Damn it, didn't you say you were not allowed to use skills because of the penalty?" Ryu said, "This is a rune." Then, with the rune of lightning, Ryu boosted his movement speed and closed the distance in an instant. Panicked, Ju Song-tak tried to utter the activation words, but there was no time for that, and with a powerful punch, Ju Song-tak's face was crushed, and he was slammed into the wall, killed instantly. Then the system message appeared. The duel has ended. The victor is Black Scythe. The loser is now a slave who will serve Black Scythe for life. Ignoring the messages, Ryu looked at Ju Seong-tak. Though thought to be dead, his face was restored. Since it wasn't a life-or-death duel, he was revived, though still unconscious. Then Ryu said, "Well, I won, even though there were casualties." Although he had prevented the corpse explosion, he couldn't stop the gangster's death. Putting aside his regret, Ryu erased the traces and disposed of the body. Just then, his phone rang. It was a call from Yamti. Ryu inquired, "What's the matter?" "What, my brother?" Hearing that something had happened to his brother but was fortunately prevented, Ryu Min asked for the details. Ryu asked, "Really? You didn't kill him yet?" Yamti replied, "Yes." "What should we do, master?" Regarding Bong Tai-wan's fate, Ryu gave a simple answer saying, "I'll send you the address. Bring him here." Then Ryu hung up and woke Ju Song-tak immediately and said, "Hey, Ju Song-tak." As soon as he saw Ryu, the guy who seemed like he would attack bowed like a submissive lamb, and he said, "I greet my master. Please give me your orders." Ryu said, "All right. Here's your first order." Then Ryu said with a cruel smile, "In a little while, a guy named Bong Tai-wan will come here. Kill him." After some time, Ryu's younger brother waved with a delighted expression as soon as he saw him, and he said, "Hyung, over here!" Yamti slyly winked behind his brother's back and said, "You're here! Ryumin si!" Ryu clicked his tongue inwardly and turned his head and said, "Are you okay, Wana? Are you hurt anywhere?" His brother said, "I got slapped on the cheek, but I'm fine." Ryu said, "It doesn't look like just a little. Come here." As Ryu Min placed his hand on his reddened cheek, a warm light began to flow. His brother inquired, "Huh? It doesn't hurt anymore." "What did you do?" Ryu replied, "It's a simple healing skill." His brother said, "Wow. We don't need to go to the hospital. It's really effective." Ryu said, "Let's go home now." His brother said, "Hyung." Ryu Min, who was about to move, turned his head at his brother's call and inquired, "What is it?" His brother inquired, "Why aren't you scolding me? You could be saying, 'See, I told you so. If you had stayed home, this wouldn't have happened.' Or, 'Do you understand how dangerous being out now?' Why aren't you saying anything?" Ryu said, "What's the point of saying what you already know? You've realized it too, haven't you? The reason why it's dangerous outside. The fear of players." Ryu Won quietly nodded. This experience had clearly shown him that it's still a dangerous world to wander around in. Ryu added, "Knowing that there's no point in me nagging, it would just be useless scolding. I'm just relieved that you're safe. If something had happened to you..." Ryu turned his head as if he didn't want to imagine it, swallowing the words left unsaid. Then he said, "Let's go home." His brother said, "Okay." Following behind, Ryu Min glanced at Yamti. He nodded as if to tell her to go first, but his brother inquired, "Hyung, why isn't Yamti Nim coming with us?" Ryu said, "Her house is in the opposite direction. She'll go on her own." Yamti waved and said, "That's right, Ryu Wan-si. You go ahead." But Ryu Wan kept feeling concerned about her, and he inquired, "Hyung, can't we invite Yamti Nim to our house?" Ryu inquired. "Why?" His brother replied, "Well, like you, she also saved my life. It wouldn't be right to part ways without offering something in return. Indeed, it was Yamti who actually saved Ryu Won, so it made sense that he wanted to show gratitude to his lifesaver." Ryu said, "But even if we invite her over, we don't have much to offer." His brother said, "I know how to cook. I've had a lot of time recently, so I've been practicing by watching YouTube videos. We have all the ingredients at home. Ryu inquired. You want to cook dinner for her? He said. Yes. Yamti Nim, how about having dinner at our place? I'm not a perfect cooker, but I can manage. Yamti inquired. Oh, really? Though touched, Yamti looked at Ryu Min, seeking his approval. She wanted to go, but she needed the master's permission. Ryu sighed quietly and spoke dryly. Fine, Yamti. My brother wants it, so stay for dinner. Upon getting the green light, Yamti's face lit up and she said, Great. On the other hand, Seo Arin let out a sigh as she slumped onto the sofa after returning home. Her mind was in turmoil. A face she had tried hard to forget had surfaced, and she said, Huang Yongmin, I never expected to see that bastard there. In fact, the last time she saw him was in the 4th round of death. She hadn't seen or heard about him since then. She wanted to forget. She was afraid to remember, but she never imagined they'd meet by chance in reality. Then Seo Arin said, It seemed he had also recognized me. After all, I looked the same in both the other world and reality, and recently, she had been in a public service announcement for the CPF unit and had become somewhat of a celebrity, so it wasn't surprising he recognized her. She asked herself, why did he come to the Grim Reaper cult? Didn't the Black Scythe deal with him harshly? In fact, it was more than harshly. Huang Yongmin had his arms cut off and was continuously tormented afterward. Seo Arin didn't know the exact details of his torment, and she said, That scumbag wouldn't have come to the Grim Reaper cult for any good reason. He must be here for revenge against the Black Scythe. And he must have been lurking around looking for the Black Scythe and got into a fight with a man he held a grudge against, then fled under the watchful eyes of bystanders. I can't let anything happen to the Black Scythe. I have to eliminate him. Though it was surprising he survived until the 10th round, the important thing was that he could become an obstacle in the future for her. And with eyes full of determination, she said, I have to kill him. She was confident. And she added, I'm a completely different person now compared to back then. After being betrayed by her trusted fellow actors and receiving advice from the Black Scythe to trust no one, Seo Arin was reborn. She wouldn't just sit back and take it anymore. She would strike first, before being struck. As she lay on the sofa looking at the ceiling, lost in such thoughts, a face suddenly appeared. It was Sang Cheol. She said, Oh, you startled me, he inquired. Did I scare you? She said. Of course. Wouldn't you be? Seo Arin, annoyed, sat up. She thought no one was home because it was quiet, but it seemed Sang Cheol had let himself in. He inquired, Didn't you know I was here? You could tell by the shoes. She replied, I didn't have time to check that. He inquired, Why? What happened? Seo Arin hesitated to answer Sang Cheol's question, and she asked herself, Can I trust the bodyguard? Ever since receiving the Black Scythe's advice, she had been wary, and she said to herself, President Ma could discard me at any time. The bodyguard is his right-hand man, so it goes without saying. He asked, Why are you hesitating? What's going on? Not wanting to share information, Seo Arin eventually opened her mouth. After all, they had been through life-and-death situations together. And she said, Do you remember Huang Yongmin? The bodyguard inquired. Huang Yongmin, the one who chased us in the forest during the 2nd round? She replied, Yes. I ran into him by chance today, he shouted. That bastard is still alive? Not seeing or hearing about him during the missions, the bodyguard was also unaware, and he said, He's a tenacious guy. I thought he'd been eliminated before the 10th round. Seo Arin said, He's alive, and his nasty personality hasn't changed. He was beating up a disabled person. The bodyguard was surprised not by the news, but by Seo Arin's eyes, which showed a cold glint despite her pretty face, and she said coldly, I have to kill him. If we leave him be, he'll just cause more trouble. Huang Yongmin needs to be eliminated. The bodyguard blinked, stunned by her chilling words, and he asked himself, Is this the same Seo Arin I know? In the 2nd round, she questioned whether they really needed to kill, even when she was almost assaulted. She worried about the perpetrator's life like a saint. But now she's changed so drastically. Though she had experienced many hardships, this was the first time he saw such a visible transformation. And he asked himself, did something specific trigger this change? In fact, the betrayal by her fellow actors and the advice from the Black Scythe was known only to the Black Scythe and Seo Arin, so the bodyguard had every reason to be puzzled. Then the bodyguard said, You're right. It would be better to kill him, as you said. But the Black Scythe spared him. The prophet also warned against pursuing him. Seo asked, puzzled. The prophet? Why? The bodyguard replied. He said that meddling with Huang Yongmin would bring great disaster. She inquired, is that all? He replied, yes. He wouldn't elaborate further. Seo didn't know that. And she asked herself, why would the prophet protect Huang Yongmin? It was baffling, but there was nothing she could do. And she said to herself, if the prophet said so, there must be a reason. I'll have to let it go. She decided to abandon her thoughts of revenge, and she said, I guess we have no choice. Let's hope he won't cause any more trouble. The bodyguard said, don't worry. He might have survived this long, but he'll be dead soon enough. She added, I'm more worried about him seeking revenge on the Black Scythe. He inquired, is that so? The bodyguard noticed her worry. It was clear she had some feelings for the Black Scythe. Though a hint of jealousy stirred within him, the bodyguard smiled nonchalantly and said, did you know? The most unnecessary worry in the world is worrying about the Black Scythe. Seo said, Bodyguard Nim, can I worry if I want to? The Black Scythe is also human. He can be in danger any time. The bodyguard was momentarily at a loss for words. He didn't expect her to take his joke so seriously. Just then, Seo looked up at the air, tilting her head. It seemed like she was checking a message. The bodyguard inquired, what's wrong, Arensi? She replied, I searched for Huang Yongmin to track him, but something strange. He inquired, what's strange? She said, it says he doesn't exist. The bodyguard was surprised and asked in astonishment, what? Are you sure you saw Huang Yongmin? Seo said, of course. He inquired, you're not mistaken. She said, do I look like I have a bad memory? It was definitely Huang Yongmin. He inquired, then could it be a false name? She replied, if it were a false name, it would say the face and name don't match. But it says he doesn't exist at all. The bodyguard found it strange, too, and he said, that's odd. Then she said, wait a moment. I'll try with another name. Seo thinking it might be an error, searched for Hong Sun-a, and she realized that the message wasn't lying. As the same message appeared, the person does not exist. The bodyguard inquired, what's wrong, RNC? She replied, I searched for the name of a dead person and it says they don't exist. He said, really? Then that means Huang Yongmin is already dead. She said, oh, yes, it does. The bodyguard asked, then who did you see? A ghost. Seo couldn't respond, feeling a chill down her spine. And the thought of it being a ghost gave her goosebumps. And she inquired, what did I see? Then she said, I'll search for someone else. Just to make sure. Though it seemed implausible for the system to be broken, she needed to try something to avoid believing she had seen a ghost. And she said, who should I search for? I'll try the prophet. Then, Seo visualized Ryu Min's face and called his name. At that moment, the system messages appeared. Face and name match, tracking the target's location. The target, Ryu Min, is 125 meters away. Follow the arrow in front of you to track the target. Then Seo said, I tried searching for the prophet and it works. He's pretty close by, and his distance is decreasing, so he must be heading home. The bodyguard inquired, should we ask the prophet about Huang Yongmin's status? She inquired. Do you think he knows? He replied, since he warned us not to touch Huang Yongmin, he might know if he's alive. Then the two went outside and took the stairs to the lower floor. Waiting in front of Ryu's house, they would soon meet him. As the elevator door opened, they found Ryu as expected. Seo said, hello, Mr. Ryu Min, Ryu inquired. Seo actress and manager? They also saw his younger brother, Ryu Wan, but there was an unfamiliar woman standing between them. Seo squinted at Yamti, and she asked herself, she looks familiar. Where have I seen her? Seo thought deeply, and soon remembered that she was the woman said to be a real-life acquaintance of the Black Scythe. And she inquired, isn't that Yamti? Yamti was quite surprised at Seo question, and she asked herself, how did she recognize me after I changed my appearance? She thought that the customization would make her unrecognizable, but someone had identified her. It seemed she hadn't changed enough. Seo asked again, it is, right? Yamti? Yamti neither confirmed nor denied, merely glancing at Ryu for a cue. However, Ryu interjected as if there was no need to be cautious, and he asked, oh, you two know each other? Seo replied, we met in the other world. At that time, she introduced herself as a real-life acquaintance of the Black Scythe. Ryu said, yes, Yamti knows the Black Scythe even in real life. Seo inquired, don't tell me, Ryu Min, you too. Ryu replied, no, I've never met him. He's quite a secretive person, she said. Then it really is Yamti. Finally, Yamti felt she could relax and answer, because her master had acknowledged it, and she smiled and said, Yes, it's me, Yamti. Seo Aaron smiled and said, I thought you looked familiar. Nice to meet you, Yamti said. Nice to meet you too. Meeting Seo Aaron in real life is surprising, Seo Aaron said. I'm more surprised that you're a real-life acquaintance of the Black Scythe. Seo Aaron, smiling, lowered her voice and revealed her desire, and she said, Yamti, if it's not too much to ask, could you give me the Black Scythe's contact information? Seriously, Yamti said, that's not appropriate. Moreover, it would be a huge disrespect to the Black Scythe. He doesn't want to reveal his identity to anyone. Yamti's serious tone made Seo Aaron feel awkward, and she said, Then, could you at least let me talk to him on the phone? I have something to say, Yamti said. I'm sorry. Even though I know him in real life, I don't have his contact information. He always calls me with a restricted number. That shows how cautious he is. He even hides his face in the CPF unit. Seo Aaron was simultaneously convinced and disappointed, and she said to herself, I wanted to meet him in person just once more. Reading her thoughts, Ryu shook off his worries, and he said to himself, She just wants to meet him, not find out my identity. Ryu had been worried that Seo Aaron might persistently ask about the Black Scythe's identity, but there was no need for that. Ryu added, Even if she did, there's no way my identity would be discovered. And in anticipation of such situations, I had told Yamti how to respond if asked about the Black Scythe in real life. Thankfully, she handled it well as instructed. Upon reading Seo Aaron's thoughts, she wasn't suspicious of Yamti. She was just envious that she could communicate with the Black Scythe in real life. Then Ryu inquired, By the way, what brings you both to my house? Seo Aaron replied, Oh, I wanted to ask Ryu Min about something personal, Ryu said. Really? Well, come on in then. While you're here, join us for a meal, she inquired. A meal? Ryu inquired. You haven't had dinner yet, right? She said. Well, no, Ryu said. Then come on in. With a grin, Ryu Min opened the front door and looked at his younger brother and asked, Is it okay if we have a few more guests? Ryu Wan was pleased to have the chance to serve dinner to Seo Aaron, whom he liked, but he also felt a bit pressured, and he said, Huh? Oh, sure. When the kimchi stew was boiling vigorously, Ryu Wan placed it in the center of the table, and he said, There's not much prepared, but please help yourselves. Seo Aaron said, Not much. This is a feast. As Seo Aaron said, there were plenty of side dishes on the table. Rolled omelet, stir-fried sausage and vegetables, japchae, stir-fried fish cake, and kimchi stew. It had taken him an hour and a half to prepare the meal, but Ryu Min had helped, otherwise it would have taken 3 hours. Ryu said, Let's eat. Seo Aaron's eyes sparkled as she tasted the kimchi stew, and she inquired, You said you followed a YouTube recipe? Ryu Wan inquired. Yes. Is it not good? She smiled and said, Not good? It's delicious. Ryu Wan finally felt relieved at Seo Aaron's radiant smile, and he sighed and said, I was worried it might not taste good. Ryu Min said, I didn't know my brother was this good at cooking. His brother smiled and said, I just don't do it often, but when I do, I can manage. Ryu Min, Ryu Wan, Seo Aaron, Ansang Cheol, and Yamti finished their meal in a warm atmosphere. Then Yamti said, Thanks for the meal, Wana. Ryu Wan said, Thank you, Nuna. Ryu Min, who was watching Yamti and Ryu Wan, asked in surprise, What? When did you two start speaking casually? His brother replied, There's quite an age gap, so it felt awkward to keep being formal, Hyung. Yamti inquired, Are you dissing me for being older, Wana? Ryu Wan laughed and said, No way, Nuna. As Ryu Wan chuckled and went to do the dishes, Yamti stood up as well and said, Are you going to do the dishes? Let me help. Seo Aaron said, I'll help too. When Seo Aaron tried to stand up, Ryu Min stopped her, and he said, Let them handle the cleanup. We have something to discuss, right? She said, Oh, right. Following Ryu, Seo Aaron and An Sang Cheol went to the living room and sat on the sofa. Ryu asked, So, what did you want to talk about? Seo Aaron said, Prophet, today I met a thug named Hwang Yong-min. Ryu listened calmly to Seo Aaron's story, and he inquired, So, Hwang Yong-min doesn't show up in searches? She replied, Yes, he's listed as a non-existent person. Do you know anything about this? Ryu said, It's as it says. He doesn't exist in this world. She inquired, What? So the person I saw was really a ghost? Ryu replied. There are no ghosts in this world. Besides, it wasn't just you who saw him, but dozens of people. She said, That's right. What's going on? Pretending to be in deep thought, Ryu shared an excuse he had made up during dinner, and he said, I guess I have no choice but to reveal the truth. Hwang Yongmin is dead, but he was resurrected as an undead by someone. Their reactions differed, but both were equally shocked, not because they didn't understand the term undead, but because they were astonished by the reality of it. And they inquired, What? Undead? Ryu said. There are players who can even resurrect corpses. Hwang Yongmin was resurrected as an undead. That's why I told you not to mess with him. Seo Arin inquired. Reviving as an undead, who would do such a thing? Ryu replied, I don't know. I saw it in a prophecy, but I only saw the back of the person. Although it was a lie, there was a bit of truth in Ryu's words, as there indeed exists a necromancer profession that can control the undead. While dark wizards also handle undead, it's more about summoning rather than raising corpses like necromancers. Shamans, on the other hand, tend to blow up corpses. Ryu said to himself, Only necromancers can make corpses move like real people. But they can't make them speak like Hwang Yongmin did. But it didn't matter, as the important thing now was to convince Seo Arin. Fortunately, Seo Arin believed Ryu's lie without a doubt, and she inquired, So I encountered a sort of zombie? Ryu replied. You could say that. She said, That's creepy. While Seo Arin rubbed her arms, and Sang Cheol asked with a curious expression, Prophet, is that necromancer a Korean player? What level are they? Ryu replied. I don't know the details. And Sang Cheol inquired, Could that person become a threat to us later? Ryu said, Well, if they're an enemy, wouldn't they be dangerous? Though he spoke as if he didn't know, Ryu was aware that the necromancer's existence would become an obstacle in the future. To the Grim Reaper cult, specifically. Even knowing this, Ryu hadn't eliminated the necromancer. He intended to use even that obstacle. Then Ryu smiled and said to himself, Darkness makes the light shine brighter. No one noticed Ryu's slight smile. After Seo Arin and the others left, Ryu approached his brother and patted his shoulder and said, Good job. Your cooking skills are impressive. His brother laughed and said, I'm thinking of getting a certificate like you suggested. Cooking is fun and I might have a knack for it. Ryu Min smiled along with his chuckling brother, but it wasn't out of joy. It was to hide his bitterness. And he said to himself, A certificate, huh? It's a luxury for me right now, and no matter how impressive a player is, their life is always at stake. Fail to pass the 20th round, and life is over. Ryu added, Sure, it doesn't matter what happens to my life, but I want to create a world where my brother can live normally. That is my goal in this final regression, and to achieve that, all variables must be eliminated, and the plan must be executed precisely. Returning to his room, Ryu Min lay on his bed, deep in thought. He reviewed his plans and examined potential obstacles, and he said to himself, Could Seo Arin be a variable? She's too involved now. Removing her would be a bigger variable, and even if she knew Yamti and Ryu Min were close, it wouldn't change anything. And as long as they maintained that they couldn't contact the Black Scythe directly, she wouldn't pry or doubt. That was clear from her thoughts. Then he asked, Then what about Ansang Cheol and Jeffrey? Ryu thought that Ansang Cheol was always around Ma Kyung Rock or Seo Arin, so reading his thoughts was easy. In other words, it was easy to handle him if needed. Ryu added, But not Jeffrey. He was unpredictable, especially concerning matters related to Christine, acting impulsively and thoughtlessly. I detest troublesome flies. As Ryu was reviewing potential threats, Heavenly Demon called. Ryu said, Yes, what's the matter? Heavenly Demon said, Do you have time tomorrow afternoon? Jeffrey and my future father-in-law want to meet you. They're coming to Korea to apologize for Jeffrey's previous threat. Ryu inquired, Jeffrey and Nathan are coming? Seeing their effort to apologize in person showed they understood the seriousness of the situation. Then Ryu said, All right, what time do they arrive? Heavenly Demon said, They'll arrive at Incheon Airport at 3 p.m. Ryu said, Then let's meet at a nearby cafe at 4 p.m. I'll send you the location. He said, Okay, I'll inform them. After the call, Ryu immediately contacted Yamti and he asked, Yamti, how many people can we control currently? She replied, With the chairman of Player Haven and the police chief controlled, we have 3 spots left. Ryu said. Good. One spot should be enough. She inquired. What's going on? Ryu replied. I'm meeting Jeffrey and Nathan tomorrow. Yamty inquired. To apologize? Ryu's lips curled into a sly smile, and he said, we'll see. So, just in case, be ready to join me. On the other hand, Nathan and Jeffrey headed straight to the cafe the prophet mentioned as soon as they arrived in Korea. Nathan inquired, Jeffrey, where is the prophet? Jeffrey replied, well, he's not here yet, so it seems he hasn't arrived. Nathan said, well, there are still 30 minutes until the appointment. Today, Nathan intended to appease the prophet, to whom he came to apologize. Then Jeffrey inquired, yes, shall I order some drinks? Nathan said, I'm fine. Go and order your coffee. He said, no, if you don't drink, I won't either. Nathan smiled satisfactorily, but only for a moment. And he said to himself, I can't believe such a polite guy lost his temper and escalated the situation like this. Just thinking about the recording of him threatening the prophet wiped the smile off his face. And he asked, why did you do it? Jeffrey inquired. Pardon? What do you mean? Nathan said, I thought you were a cold-hearted assassin, but you lost your temper. Why? He said, I told you, sir, to help Christine, Nathan said. So you used such a barbaric method? You sounded more like a raging beast than a cold-blooded one. Then Nathan asked, were you perhaps in love with my daughter? Jeffrey's heart sank, but he tried to remain calm, and he replied, there's no such thing. Nathan inquired, then why did you lose your reason? Like a fool blinded by love. Jeffrey could only lower his head. He knew that explaining further would only sound like excuses. And he said, I have no excuse. Hearing the door open, Jeffrey looked up indifferently and opened his mouth in surprise and said, he's here. Nathan turned his head to see a small-framed Asian walking towards them, and he said to himself, not much of a first impression, short and seemingly lacking muscles, an ordinary-looking weak Asian. That was Nathan's assessment, but he didn't care much. And why would the appearance matter? That guy was the Nostradamus of this era who could see the future. Nathan greeted first with a kind face, and Ryu nodded in response. Ryu said, you must be Nathan Craig, Christine's father. Nathan said, yes, that's correct. Please have a seat. Then Jeffrey said, nice to see you, Prophet. Ryu glanced at Jeffrey, who greeted him and responded curtly, I'm not particularly pleased. Jeffrey immediately apologized to try to soothe the Prophet's mood, and he said, I apologize for what happened back then. I have committed a grave sin against you. Jeffrey bowed deeply enough to show his sincerity, and he said to himself, they say bowing like this helps to calm the other person's anger in Korea. It was information he got from K-dramas, but it wouldn't work on Ryu, who could read minds. But Ryu said coldly, then die. Jeffrey was shocked, and he inquired, pardon? Ryu said, you said you committed a grave sin. Go and die. Jeffrey said, Prophet, your words are too harsh. Ryu said, too harsh? That's odd. It hasn't even been a few days, and you've already forgotten? You threatened me with a knife, saying you'd kill me. Isn't that harsher, don't you remember? Should I play the recording loudly here? Jeffrey's expression hardened at the unexpectedly harsh response. He thought after bowing this deeply, the prophet would laugh it off, saying, it's okay, it's all in the past. Nathan, too, seemed surprised by the prophet raising his voice, unlike his appearance. Jeffrey said, I apologize. I am very, very sorry. Ryu said, why do you keep apologizing? I don't even feel your sincerity. That was a provocation, a kind of test, to easily read Jeffrey's true feelings. Sure enough, Jeffrey said to himself, this little prophet is annoying, but I can't kill him. Jeffrey showed no sign of remorse. Of course, he was pretending to be calm because Nathan was there. Reading his thoughts, Ryu said to himself, Tsk. This is why you can't easily trust a yellow-haired beast. It wasn't surprising. Ryu had already expected there would be lingering resentment, and he said to himself, I can't leave such an unpredictable variable. Ryu had already decided to eliminate the variable. Apologies were never his real intention. Unaware of this, Nathan tried to lighten the mood with a forced smile, and he said, it seems the prophet is very angry. Rightfully so. Even I was furious when I heard the recording. But wouldn't it be better for both of us to let it go now? I've scolded him harshly and made him swear never to do it again. As a man of God, you should know the weight of a vow. Nathan's long-winded speech didn't reach Ryu's ears. Ryu, knowing there was a bribe, wanted him to get to the point quickly. Fortunately, Nathan seemed to realize Ryu's uninterested expression and hurriedly took something out of his bag. And he said, A 5-carat diamond, worth about 300 million won. Please accept it, Ryu inquired. What for? Nathan replied. As a token of apology, Ryu said. But the mistake wasn't yours, Nathan, Nathan said. No, it's my fault. Jeffrey is like a son to me, having raised him since he was young. It's the parents' fault if the child is poorly raised, isn't it? Ryu looked at the diamond quietly. It wasn't a huge bribe for someone overflowing with money, but it was excessive, even beyond excessive for others. And he said to himself, no reason not to accept it. I'll give it to Minjuri. If he gave it to Minjuri, she would likely see it as a debt and become more loyal to him. If he could win her heart with just 300 million won, it wasn't a waste. Then Ryu said, all right, I accept your apology. Ryu smiled as he accepted the diamond. He might look materialistic, but he didn't care. And Nathan wasn't just apologizing, but also asking him to take good care of his daughter. Ryu accepted the bribe, but there was still one more thing to receive. And he said, I need to use the restroom. As Ryu left the table, Jeffrey's expression quickly turned disgruntled, and he said, what's so great about that prophet that he's so hard to please? Nathan said, don't say such things. Without the prophet, Christine wouldn't be alive. Jeffrey said, he's withholding crucial information, so how can she? Nathan interrupted his words and said, Jeffrey. Nathan glared at him fiercely and added, I don't care if you have complaints, but keep your mouth shut in front of the prophet. Don't ruin the relationship we barely restored. Got it? Jeffrey said. Yes, don't worry. Jeffrey said not to worry, but he still harbored resentment inside. At least until Yamti appeared and said, hello, Jeffrey inquired. What is it? Yamti said, sorry to interrupt, but it's a bit noisy. Could you please be quieter? Please. Yamti appeared and disappeared quickly, but it was enough to bring Jeffrey under her control. Nathan inquired, who was that? Someone you know? Jeffrey looked at her and shook his head as she subtly signaled, and he said, I don't know her. At that moment, Ryu returned from the restroom. He met Jeffrey's eyes, but the previous hostility was gone. Ryu smiled and said to himself, so, she has taken control, and the variable was eliminated, and detailed orders could be given over the phone. Then Ryu smiled and spoke cheerfully. Well, shall we have some coffee as a gesture of reconciliation? It will be my treat, Nathan said. Yes, of course. After the 10th round, the celestial realm was in an uproar because one of the 7 archangels, Remiel, was missing. Michael, one of the 7 archangels, asked a soldier, speak truthfully. Is it true? The soldier replied, yes. I clearly saw him entering the Akashic records. Michael inquired, and that was the last you saw of him? The soldier replied, yes. Hearing the soldier's testimony, Michael furrowed his fine brow slightly, and he said, I see. You may go. Then Michael folded his wings and stood lost in thought. He had gathered all the information he could from the soldier's testimonies, and he said to himself, I've heard rumors about a player calling angels to the oracle altar and killing them, but coincidentally, Remiel went missing at that time, and the soldiers last saw him emerging from the Akashic records and heading somewhere. Then Michael asked himself several questions. Did he really go down to the oracle altar after hearing about the angels being killed? If so, why hadn't he returned to the celestial realm after several days? And why hadn't he responded to my calls? There was only one hypothesis left after all these questions. Is he dead? Remiel? Did he die fighting that player who killed angels? Michael added. It's hard to believe that a member of the 7 archangels was killed by a player who had only progressed through 10 rounds, but there was no other hypothesis. And the only option left is to go to the Akashic records. Michael already knew Remiel frequently visited the Akashic records. He often said he was bored and would go listen to stories from other dimensions. Michael said he must have heard something from Luvaya. That entity loved to gossip and might have told Remiel about the events on Earth. Then, in an instant, Michael teleported to the entrance of the Akashic records and opened the door. Upon entering, he saw Luvaya standing there as if waiting. Luvaya said, Greetings, Archangel of Archangels. Michael, he inquired, you knew I was coming? Luvaya replied, yes. The Akashic records, the unparalleled hyperdimensional information repository, tells us many things. Michael said, then you know why I'm here. Luvaya said, it's about Remiel. Michael said, indeed, as you know he's missing. Tell me honestly what happened. Luvaya inquired, have you heard of the Black Scythe? Michael's eyebrow twitched at the unexpected remark, and he inquired, what is that? Luvaya said, You haven't heard? It's the current #1 ranked player, he inquired. Is he the one killing the soldiers? Luvaya replied, yes. Michael shouted, insolent wretch! How dare he think of killing angels? Luvaya added, not just soldiers. Remiel fell to him as well. Though expected, hearing it directly was shocking. Michael inquired that a member of the 7 archangels, capable of handling 100 first-class angels, was killed by a mere human. Is that possible? Luvaya replied, whether it's possible or not, it has already happened. And Black Scythe, a remarkable human, Michael said, to grow enough to kill an archangel in just 10 rounds. He is an extraordinary human, but it ends today. Michael couldn't ignore this since it wasn't just soldiers, but an archangel who died, and he said, before he grows further, I must kill him immediately. Luvaya said, Black Scythe is still on Earth. The 11th round starts in a few days. He said, then I'll target him at the start of the 11th round. Opening the dimensional door and manifesting now will imply a very heavy penalty. Luvaya added, that's wise, but I recommend waiting longer than the 11th round. Michael inquired, why? Luvaya paused briefly before speaking. Then he replied, because it will better serve your greater cause. On the other hand, the day before the 11th round began, Ryu met with Minjuri. Minjuri inquired, what is it that you wanted to give me? Ryu said, here, this. When Ryu handed over a rather large ring case, Minjuri's eyes widened like a rabbit's, and she inquired, what is this? Ryu said, open it. Then Minjuri opened the case with a pounding heart, and she couldn't help but gasp. Seeing a large 5-carat diamond was shimmering brilliantly. Minjuri said, what should I say? I'm not ready for this. Seeing her obvious misunderstanding, Ryu quickly set things straight, and he said, don't get the wrong idea. I got this as a gift from an acquaintance, but I don't need it, so I'm giving it to you. She inquired, you don't need this? Ryu replied, what would a guy do with a jewel? You can sell it or use it however you like. She inquired, how much is it worth? Ryu said. The appraisal said, 300 million won? Minjuri was shocked, and she inquired, 300 million? Ryu said, it could be more. Minjuri couldn't even think of closing her mouth, and she inquired, why are you giving this to me? Ryu replied, I told you, I don't need it. She said, you could sell it. Ryu said, too much hassle. Even if I sell it, it's just pocket change for me. Minjuri said, you know that sounded really arrogant just now, right? Ryu said, but it's true. In fact, the company owned by Ma Kyung Rock, which had a market cap of 900 billion won, had doubled in value in just 8 months. Naturally, Ryu's investments had also doubled. Effectively, he now possessed wealth close to 600 billion won. In that context, what use was 300 million won to him? Ryu said, it's literally pocket change to me, but it's not the same for you, right? It's more useful for someone who needs it. Use it to help your father and be a good daughter. The convenience store business isn't doing well these days, is it? She said. That's true, but you didn't have to do this. I already owe you a lot. Ryu said, don't think of it as a debt. Friends help each other out. If it feels too burdensome, just think of it as a gift. She asked, who gives a gift worth 300 million won? Ryu smiled and said, rich people do. He wouldn't back down or yield an inch, and Minjuri was left wondering how to refuse him. Ryu said, just say thank you. No need to feel burdened. She said, I really don't need this kind of help. Though she said that, Minjuri was tempted. She worked at the convenience store with her father, but sales were declining day by day, and she even had to confess to her father that she had used up the 10 million won she got from Ryu Min on living expenses and had to take out a loan. Just the other day, she was considering selling her equipment to raise some quick cash, and in this desperate situation, the jewel was an irresistible temptation. Then she inquired, really, can I have this? Ryu replied, yes. Minjuri smiled and said, thank you, but I'm not just taking it, I'm borrowing it. I'll pay you back with interest. Ryu said, sure, do that. Then Minjuri took the diamond and hugged it to her chest, thinking of her gratitude towards Ryu. And she added, really, thank you, but let's make one thing clear. I'm naturally a good daughter, you know. November 1st, stroke of midnight, it was the time to travel to the other world. At the beginning of the 11th round, the angel appeared and said, hello, 690 humans? For once, all of you have returned without anyone dying? Ryu said to himself, no one died? It made sense, as most of them are Player Haven members. Out of 690 people, 489 were remaining Player Haven members, and Player Haven members were chosen through a rigorous character test, so there was no internal fighting. Ryu added, "It seems the other 201 didn't fight either. Anyone with half a brain would know. With so few people, fighting each other would only cause loss." Then the angel said, before explaining the 11th round, "Since there are fewer people, we need to merge the zones first, right?" As the angel flapped its wings, the ground rumbled, and the meadows were restructured. By now, it was already the 4th zone merge, so people weren't as shocked as before. It was only when the merge was complete that they were taken aback. The angel laughed and said, "Are you surprised by the increase in people? That's because we merged all zones worldwide." The players were shocked and inquired, "All zones?" They thought the game would proceed in units of 5,000 as before, but the scale had grown. The angel added, "The zone name is CA-EA001. As I mentioned, we merged all 190 zones worldwide, and the exact number of participants is 132,126. In terms of countries, it's 195, but countries with many people were split into several zones. Conversely, countries with fewer people were merged with others." Ryu said to himself, "Indeed, countries with large populations like India or China would be split into several zones, unlike ours, which ended up with one zone." And the players nodded as they listened to the explanation. And because all countries had gathered, there were this many people in the meadow, and there were also many angels. There seemed to be about 190 angels floating in the sky, each explaining to the people from their respective zones. The angel added, "We will continue in one zone from now on. So shall we reveal the 11th round quest?" Then the system message appeared. Round 11. Accumulate points in the fantasy world for 24 hours. Multiple, unified zone, CA-EA001. Participating zones, 190. Achieving zones, 0/95. One player inquired, "Huh? What's this? Participating zones? Achieving zones?" Another inquired. "Not participants or achievers?" As the players murmured at the different quest screen, the angel explained, "You completed the sub-quest count in the fantasy world last round, right? This time, it's a similar mission. The difference is that the zone that accumulates the most points wins." One player inquired, "A zone competition?" The angel replied, "Correct. Unlike the previous rounds based on individual performance, this time you proceed as a team by zone." One inquired, "By zone?" But the zones were just merged. The angel said, "Of course, it's the zones before the merge. Each zone forms a team of roughly 700 people. You won't be sharing experience points. It's just a team sharing victory and defeat. You could call it a joint fate." The players nodded, understanding. Then the angel added, "The quest is simple. Travel around the fantasy world and complete sub-quests to earn points. The points you earn individually are added to your team's total, and the team with the most points wins." One player said, "Oh, it's really a team competition." Another inquired, "Even if you don't earn many points, you might survive if your team ranks high?" The angel replied, "That's right. Even if someone slacks off, as long as the team ranks high, that person also passes. The top 95 teams pass, from first place to 95th. One player said, "Oh, so that's why it's participants and achieving zones, not participants and achievers." Then Korean players looked at each other. They were no longer competitors to eliminate, but teammates sharing the same boat. The angel added, "Just because you're a team doesn't mean you share the rewards. The rank rewards are still based on individual performance." One said, "So there are individual rankings, huh?" Another said, "If you don't get in the top 3, you don't get the rewards, right?" Then the angel added, "Since the zones are merged, the rewards from this round on are slightly enhanced. You'll have to work hard to get into the rankings." Despite the angel's words, people remained indifferent. They didn't expect to receive the ranking rewards, limited to just 3 individuals. Surviving by earning as many points as possible was their primary goal. The angel added, "Since the zones are merged, we also need to reduce the number of zone representatives to 1. We'll select the player with the highest individual points as the unified zone representative." One player inquired, "The player with the highest individual points?" Another said to himself, "Guess we can't aim to be the zone representative." No one said it, but they all thought the same thing. Black Scythe will take first place again. Then Angel said, you should strive for survival, but there's another reason to earn points. If you survive this round, a special shop will open where you can use the points you've earned. One inquired, a special shop? The angel explained. There you can use your points to acquire special buffs and items. Think of points as the currency for the special shop. Hearing that points could be used as currency, a spark of enthusiasm appeared on the players' faces, and one said, whatever it is, earning lots of points is crucial. Another said, in that case, let's all do our best. Complete those sub-quests like crazy to rack up points. The Korean players steeled their resolve and looked at the other players. They saw many foreign players they hadn't seen before. Ryu said to himself, this round is like a national competition of sorts. Thus, everyone seemed motivated, but there was a fact the angel hadn't mentioned, another way to earn points. Then the angel said, there are various ways to earn points. During the 24-hour limit, completing sub-quests scattered across the area grants points based on difficulty. Killing monsters in the field also gives points along with experience. One player smiled and said, simple enough. Another said, just like before, we should focus on completing sub-quests. People were confidently laughing and talking, but they fell silent as the angel continued. Oh, and killing other players also grants points. The angel laughed brightly and added, I'm not telling you how many points. Find out for yourself. It'll be more than you expect, but no one could follow suit. And one inquired, you get points for killing people? Another inquired, so if you kill someone from your own team? One said, no. Killing someone from your team is a loss. You lose someone who could be earning points. Another said to himself, if you're going to kill, target players from other countries. As people's thoughts became clear, Ryu sighed and shook his head, and he said to himself, just as the angel intended, they'll see each other as enemies and fight. In fact, the rule about earning points for killing others was there to incite people to kill and distrust each other. Ryu added, after dividing them by country, they'll probably give a cooperative quest in the 12th round. Whoever designed this had a twisted sense of humor. While inwardly clicking his tongue, Ryu observed the players. They quickly broke the silence and started cheering again. And one said, since it's like this, let's work hard on the sub-quests. Another said, right. We have the top-ranked player, Black Scythe, on our side. One added, earning points is no big deal. Let's all survive together. Their cheers, however, were short-lived. As the angel said, now that the explanation is over, we will immediately transport you to the fantasy world. Oh, by the way, the starting location is random. Starting all in the same place would be boring, isn't right? Realizing they would be scattered, everyone fell silent again. Despite the start of the long-awaited 11th round, Christine was feeling down. This round might very well be her last. Then she said, there's nothing to worry about. I have the power of dominion. She had an absolute power called the power of dominion. In case of emergency, she could use it to block anyone trying to ambush her. But how do you think she, who wasn't particularly strong, became the representative of the district? The reason was the people who steadily gathered around her. Then she said to someone, you've arrived. Lord Berber, he said. Greetings, Lady Chrissy, she said. Hello, Lord Lupin, he said. Greetings, Lady Chrissy. Players approached and greeted her using their tracking skills. They were comrades and party members who had been with her since the 2nd round. They were also followers of the only priest job. Then Christine said to herself, with them, I have nothing to fear. In fact, the rune Christine acquired to commemorate her priest advancement was the Rune of Life. And since it was a rune that gave experience points and stats the more she healed or saved lives, she had no choice but to help others, whether she liked it or not. But thanks to that, so many people have gathered, as who would refuse free healing in this world? And it wasn't like she was stealing monsters. Christine said to herself, although I used healing to gain experience points and stats, they don't need to know that. But no matter the hidden truth, people saw her as a nightingale volunteering for free, and she became the district representative by emphasizing that she was the only healer. And thanks to that, she maintained her position as the representative from the 2nd round until now and could lead many followers under the title of Saint. Soon, the number of people gathered around Christine reached about 100. A reliable human shield surrounded Christine. Christine said to herself, as long as they're around, I don't have to worry about ambushes. She felt relieved, but couldn't afford to relax. Since she didn't know who might ambush her, She kept a vigilant eye like a meerkat. Then one said, "Are you all right, Chrissy? You seem tense today." Christine said, "I'm fine. Thanks for worrying, Douglas." He said, "If anything happens, let me know. I, as the Saint's right-hand man, will definitely protect you." Christine smiled and said, "That's reassuring," but she didn't neglect her surroundings. And she had even learned the presence detection skill, so even if someone approached while invisible, it wouldn't be a problem. As she thought of an assassin, she remembered Jeffrey from the other district, and she said to herself, "Even if it was for me, threatening to kill the powerless prophet is disappointing." And since the districts had merged, she would meet him eventually, but she decided not to think about it. Although she knew his nickname, she didn't know his face due to customization, and she didn't want to find him anyway. And she said, "Come to think of it, since the districts are merged, I can meet Prophet and Ma Kyung-rock too." She wasn't close to Prophet, but could she trust her fiancé, Ma Kyung-rock? At least he seemed better than Jeffrey. He was a contender for the top 2 and 3 ranks in the previous district. And she said to herself, maybe he is the prince on a white horse who will save me. She shouldn't rely on it, but she was curious about who would save her. Then the angel said, "Now that the explanation is over, I will send you all to the fantasy world." Hearing the angel's words, it seemed like it was about to start in earnest. And she said to herself, "I must survive." She already knew the strategy for the 11th round from the prophet, and survival was more important than attacking for now. Then Christine smiled confidently and said, "I'm confident with these people," but suddenly the angel smirked and spoke. "Oh, by the way, the starting location will be randomly assigned. Good luck." Before Christine could react, a bright light flashed and disappeared. As Christine blinked, a lush forest appeared instead of a meadow, and she inquired, "Where is this?" She was curious about her location, but more than that, she was confused because the people who were with her had all disappeared. Her mind went blank, making her earlier confidence meaningless, but she quickly regained her composure and used her surrounding detection skill. And she said, "Huh? There's one person nearby." Christine saw a red dot close by and immediately headed in that direction. Whether it was an enemy or an ally, she couldn't do anything alone with her job. Luckily, the person nearby was the paladin she had just parted from. And she said, "Huh? Lord Douglas?" He said, "Lady Chrissy. I was worried after everyone got separated, but to meet Lady Chrissy right away. This is fate." Christine smiled with relief and said, "It seems so." Then she said to herself, "What if it had been someone I didn't know?" It's a relief. Since Douglas had been with her since the 2nd round, he could be trusted. Douglas added, "Lord Berber is nearby too." She inquired. "Oh, really?" he said. "He left to explore the surroundings for a moment. He'll be back soon." Using the surrounding detection skill, Christine confirmed that there was indeed a movement. Soon, Berber returned and brightened at the sight of Christine. He inquired, "Oh, Lady Chrissy? You're here too?" Christine smiled and said, "Yes. Nice to see you, Lord Berber." He smiled and said, "What a coincidence. With Lady Chrissy here, we don't have to worry about dying now." Then Douglas and Berber naturally stood beside Christine. They didn't ask for permission to accompany her. Christine said to herself, "Well, it's fine. I can't manage alone anyway." With these 2 reliable people, she felt reassured, though it was less so than when she had 100 people. Douglas said, "Since we have plenty of time, let's wait here for now. Other people might come looking for Lady Chrissy." Berber agreed and said, "That's true. Let's wait here for a while. Those who got separated will probably use tracking to find Lady Chrissy." Christine said, Then let's wait a bit." She preferred moving with a group rather than alone. Efficiency aside, it was much safer. However, she didn't know that at the moment she decided to wait, someone behind her was smiling slyly. On the other hand, Ryu emerged from the alley and saw a peaceful village, and he said, "This is the Albiz Kingdom." Unlike the clean Holy Empire, this city had a rough but somehow peaceful feel. Ryu was wondering, how come the starting location is different every time? In fact, there were so many starting points that, out of the 67 times he had experienced the 11th round, only a handful of places overlapped. And if someone says, "Isn't it natural since it's random?" then why did Ryu always get the same random rune fragment every time? While some random elements were different each time, others remained the same. Ryu couldn't understand the system for that reason. Then Ryu said, "It doesn't matter. Being in the Albiz Kingdom isn't bad. Rather, it's good." Ryu's first quest target was the Forest of Labyrinth. Fortunately, it wasn't far from the Albiz Kingdom. Ryu inquired, Shall I check people's locations with clairvoyance first? In fact, Ryu had a skill he received as a special reward in the last round. Temporary skill. Clairvoyance. Effect. Close your eyes and say the activation word to activate. A virtual eye appears, allowing you to see from a third-person perspective. By thinking of the player's nickname and face, you can immediately switch viewpoints. Closing his eyes, Ryu used the skill and saw himself from a third-person perspective. Ryu, in third-person mode, thought of a person, Minjuri. The viewpoint changed, showing Minjuri. Ryu said, Minjuri ended up in the Holy Empire. She was quite far away. It didn't look like they'd meet easily. Then Ryu said, what about Yamti? Thinking of her nickname and face, the viewpoint immediately shifted to above Yamti. Ryu said, she's also in the Holy Empire. Well, it doesn't matter if she's not available for this round. He considered using her if she was close, but it was too far. Next, Ryu checked Seo Arin, Aged Man No Gay, Ma Kyung Rock, and An Sang Cheol's locations one by one. It wasn't just curiosity about where they were. He needed to read their positions and actions to assess if they would become variables in this round, as they might interfere with his quest in the Forest of Labyrinth. Then Ryu said, Seo Arin and Aged Man No Gay are far away, so no worries, but Ma Kyung Rock and An Sang Cheol are close. Not only were they close, but they also seemed intent on tracking him down. How did he know? Because he could read their thoughts through clairvoyance. Ryu added, clairvoyance is like another version of me. My rune also applies to the clairvoyant perspective. Ryu didn't choose clairvoyance over the point buff for nothing. He chose it because it was easy to read the opponent's inner thoughts remotely and prepare in advance. Then Ryu said, Ma Kyung Rock and An Sang Cheol plan to find me. They think they can gain something by sticking to me. That's fine by him. He had business with Ma Kyung Rock anyway. And Ryu said, he's going to commit atrocities by massacring foreign players in this round. I need to deal with him in advance. Next, he checked the location of Jeffrey, who was controlled by Yamti. As expected, he was far away and useless. Next, he checked the location of Ju Seong Tak. He had instructed Ju Seong Tak, who became a slave due to a duel, to find him no matter where he landed. Since he knew the face of the Black Scythe from before becoming a slave, tracking was not an issue. Ryu said, fortunately, he's coming as well. Seeing Ju Seong Tak running toward him, Ryu smiled and he said, to obtain an item in the Forest of Labyrinth, I needed Ju Seong Tak's help. Finally, Ryu turned his view to Christine. He knew her nickname, and having seen her customized face before, finding her was not difficult. Ryu said, she's already in contact with 2 people. Christine was with 2 people who seemed to be her followers, but those 2 are why he said Christine was in danger. In fact, the threats were coming from a cult called Despair Church, and the leader of Despair Church was America's only necromancer, John Delgado. Under his lead, Despair Church aimed to kill Christine. Ryu said, reading their thoughts, one is from Despair Church, and the other is a traitor colluding with him. The most trusted ones were spies and traitors. That's why Christine will die in the 11th round. Ryu said, the story would be different if I intervened. He knew who the enemies were, but there was no need to act right away, as the order to kill hadn't been given yet, and the Despair Church would act once they gathered their forces. That means there's still time. During that time, Ryu planned to proceed with the quest with Ju Seong Tak. He had to obtain an essential item from the Forest of Labyrinth. It was an item that allowed him to conceal his nickname. On the other hand, since the beginning of the 11th round, Heavenly Demon looked more flustered than ever, and he said, damn it, we're all scattered? He thought they would move together because it was a group mission, but they were scattered like it was an individual mission. It was an unexpected situation that even the Prophet had not mentioned, making him more bewildered. And he asked himself, what's going on? Did the Prophet forget to mention it? Or could it be? Heavenly Demon shook his head and said, there's no way the Prophet would deliberately withhold information. There wouldn't be any benefit to that. He must not have known we would scatter. Even the seemingly perfect prophet sometimes misses out on important information like this. He added, damn, how am I supposed to find Christine like this? Heavenly Demon intended to protect his fiancée, Christine. At least he needed to act like he was trying to avoid any suspicion. And he said, honestly, I don't love her. How could I have such feelings for a foreigner after just a few months? He hardly considers her his fiancée. but that didn't mean he wanted anything bad to happen to her. No businessman wants their business relationship to break down. He added, I wanted to protect her, but now I can't even track her. He knew her nickname was Chrissy, but he had never met her in this other world, so he didn't know her face. This made tracking impossible under the current conditions, and he had no idea where to find Christine. Then he inquired, should I just focus on completing quests and earning points? No matter how he thought about it, there was no way to help Christine, and the only thing he could do was earn points and keep the group alive. Heavenly Demon added, there's no need to worry. The prophet said, right? A lifesaver will appear to save Christine. If everything goes as the prophet said, it means she won't die. So there's no need for me to step in. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. So let's focus on earning points. Now, where should I go to find a quest? Just then, a well-paved road where carriages might travel appeared before him. At the end of the road was a large city surrounded by walls. He said, is that a kingdom? There must be many quests there. As Heavenly Demon walked, a thought crossed his mind, and he inquired, what if I run into other players while wandering around? He would greet a Korean player with a smile, but what about players from other countries? In fact, there's no benefit in being with players from other countries according to the rules. They come from different areas and aren't on the same team. They can't share points, and they don't speak the same language. And they are the only competitors that need to be eliminated. Heavenly Demon said, didn't they say you get points for killing other players? A lot of points. In that sense, players from other countries were good targets. He added, if I don't kill them first, they'll come after me. Surely I'm not the only one thinking this way. After thinking it over, Heavenly Demon decided he would kill players from other countries after assessing the situation. It was a necessary action for survival. Then he said, wait, perhaps it's more efficient to hunt foreign players than to complete quests for points. And if things went well, he might even take the top spot in the rankings and become the zone representative. But at that moment, he remembered the Black Scythe, and he said, no, there's no benefit in becoming the zone representative. Black Scythe will kill me and take the position immediately. And high-level players couldn't be controlled by the zone representative, so the Black Scythe couldn't be stopped. He added, for now, aiming for second place is the best. The first place will always be the Black Scythe anyway. First, Heavenly Demon needed to complete a side quest and see which method was better for accumulating points. Was it faster to kill players or complete quests? Then he said, let's see if there are any people around. Using his surrounding detection skill, he checked for red dots. Seeing the red dot approaching him from behind, Heavenly Demon drew his sword and turned around. But the person running towards him with the joy of a puppy meeting its owner was none other than Sang Cheol. Heavenly Demon inquired, Director An, what happened, Manager An? Were you tracking me? He replied, of course. As soon as we were dropped into this strange place, I tracked you down. It's better to move together since we're on the same team, right? Heavenly Demon nodded. He felt uneasy traveling alone, but having his right-hand man beside him was reassuring. And he said, shall we go on a quest together? He said, yes. SEO. But wouldn't it be better to move with the help of the buffer? Heavenly Demon inquired. Do you mean Minjuri? And Sang Cheol replied, yes. Without receiving her buffs, I feel empty and somehow like I'm losing out. It made sense. As with a single buff, stats could increase by 70%. So the difference between receiving it and not was significant. And without it now, it even felt like they were under a debuff. Heavenly Demon said, that's true. If we receive her blessed buff, it'll last for 3 hours. And Sang Cheol said, then I'll track down Minjuri. Ma Kyung-rok stopped in Sang Cheol, who was about to use the tracking skill, and he said, no, let's go to the Black Scythe instead. He inquired, huh? The Black Scythe? Heavenly Demon replied, Minjuri will surely try to move with the Black Scythe. If we approach Minjuri, who isn't close to us, it'll only make her more wary. Instead, if we attach ourselves to the Black Scythe, who we have some familiarity with, we can naturally receive Minjuri's buffs and see how he accumulates points. And Sang Cheol said, indeed, the Black Scythe has consistently maintained top performance in every round. Let's do as you say, SEO. The two laughed and changed their direction. Their target was none other than the Black Scythe. At the same time, there were many people in other countries thinking the same as Ma Kyung-rok. One player inquired, didn't the angel clearly say, you get points for killing other players? Another replied, yes, that's correct. Chinese player Shizukan had a sinister smile. Ordinary people might hesitate to kill, but not him. And having ascended to a high-ranking position in the underworld in his late 20s thanks to his unusual talent, killing was easy for him. Then he said, "Earning points is damn easy. Just kill every bastard you see, right?" the player said. "Yes, boss. But you must not kill Chinese players," Shizukan shouted. "Do you think I don't know that, you bastard? You think I'm stupid, damn it?" His subordinate immediately apologized and said, "I spoke out of turn. I'm sorry." Even in this other world, his subordinate acted subserviently without complaint. After all, Shizukan's skill in killing was well recognized. Then he said, "Listen carefully if you don't want to die. We need to survive to the end and take over the high-ranking positions." His 9 subordinates, bowing their heads, said, "We will follow you, Shizukan." Shizukan smiled contentedly, and he said, "That's what I like to hear. I'll make sure we all survive. The same goes for the underworld. As long as we survive, we can eliminate all competitors," he added. "From now on, we hunt players from other countries. Think of them as monsters. Kill them without showing any mercy as soon as you see them. That's how we survive," one inquired. "But Shizukan, how do we distinguish players from other countries? We can't see their nicknames, and their appearances are probably customized." Shizukan said, "You idiot. You can tell by talking to them. We don't speak the same language." The player said, "Ah, I see." Shizukan said, "Now that you understand, let's move. Use your detection skills and kill any bastards you find." Shizukan, smiling with his subordinates, immediately put his plan into action. There were 2 red dots nearby. Judging by their appearance, they seemed to be Western players. The Western player sensed them approaching, but it was too late. Shizukan said, "Hey, you guys aren't Chinese, right?" The player said, "What?" Shizukan shouted. "I knew it! White bastards!" Without hesitation, Shizukan killed him. The remaining Western player panicked, tried to run without looking back. He would have if he hadn't been stabbed by Shizukan's subordinates. Looking at the Western player who died skewered, Shizukan asked his subordinates, "Who got the last hit?" One replied, "I think I did." Shizukan inquired, "How many points did you get?" He replied, "I got 290 points." Shizukan said, "Really? I got 350 points. That's strange." Staring at the corpse, Shizukan pondered, why did the points vary from person to person? Then he came to one conclusion, and he said, "Could it be that the points vary based on level, and if the level was low, fewer points were awarded? If the level was high, more points were given. Then the higher the level, the more points we get?" Suddenly, one person came to mind. The player who held the top level among all, the world's #1 ranked player, Black Scythe. Shizukan said to himself, his level was 90, right? If I could just kill the Black Scythe, I might earn an unimaginable amount of points. It's well known that he's a Korean player. If I kill him, I can shoot straight to the top spot. Being the zone representative would be a bonus. He smirked, but the problem was how to kill him. While thinking, Shizukan's gaze slowly shifted to his subordinates, and he asked himself, should I use them as bait? Moreover, I can speak a little Korean. Pretending to be a Korean, he could approach while using his subordinates as shields to deliver a fatal blow. This plan seemed feasible, and he said to himself, I need to keep this secret from them. Just hearing the name Black Scythe might scare some of these idiots. Just then, one of his subordinates dragged in an Asian man, and he said, Shizukan, we caught someone trying to escape nearby. You can kill him yourself for points. The Asian man said, why are you doing this? I have no intention of fighting. I was just passing by. Listening to the man's words, Shizukan's eyes gleamed, and he said, wait a moment, are you Korean? The player said, huh? Oh, yes, you speak Korean? Shizukan said, a little. The player said, oh, thank goodness, but please, tell them to let me go. Please, Shizukan said. Before that, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen Black Scythe? The player replied. The Black Scythe? Yes, I have. We were in the same zone. Shizukan grinned and placed his sword against the Korean's neck. And he asked, do you have the tracking skill? The player replied in fear. I have it, Shizukan said. Then guide us to Black Scythe right now if you don't want to die. On the other hand, Ju Seong-tak waved his hand, approached and said, Black Scythe Nim! Ryu gave him a sharp look and said, be quiet. Even if there aren't many people around, don't be so obvious. Ju Seong-tak, who always looked at him with fierce eyes, lowered his gaze like a meek puppy, and he said, I'm sorry. Reading his thoughts revealed absolute loyalty to his master. Ryu smiled and said to himself, this is why I like the duel system. Just a duel, and you practically have control over them. Although a male slave wasn't part of the original plan, looking at Ju Seong-tak made him think it was a good idea. At least he wasn't like some others who harbor hidden intentions or cling persistently to their master. Then Ryu said, Ju Seong-tak, follow closely so you don't get lost. From here, we're entering the labyrinth. Currently, Ryu Min was at the entrance of the Forest of the Labyrinth. He planned to capture the boss of this forest, Doppelganger, and obtain the Doppelganger's ring, which allows nickname changes. And he said to himself, for that, I definitely need Ju Seong-tak's rune, which increases boss-level drop rates by 10 times. Getting the Doppelganger's ring isn't easy. This was why Ryu had summoned Ju Seong-tak. He needed his help to defeat the boss. Ju Seong-tak inquired, the labyrinth? You mean this forest? Ryu replied, yes. We're going to capture the boss here. I need your help with that. He inquired, the boss? What boss? Talking to Ju Seong-tak had its downside. He asked too many questions. And Ryu said to himself, I take back what I said about a male slave being better. Then Ryu said, just shut up and follow me. Ju Seong-tak said, I'm sorry. I'll follow quietly. Entering the forest, Ryu didn't look back. He didn't need to see to know who was following him, thanks to his clairvoyance. Seeing Black Scythe entering the forest with another man, Shizukan tilted his head, and he asked himself, what's in there that he just went in without hesitation? Even though the forest was eerie enough to make anyone hesitate, Black Scythe entered as soon as he had a companion, as if he knew what was waiting inside. One inquired, this seems suspicious. Should we follow? Shizukan said, do you think we came all this way to turn back? Of course we're following. Hey, punk! The Korean player, who had been captured, looked at them with a scared expression. Shizukan said, why are you just standing there? Lead the way. He said, okay, this way, Shizukan said. If you think of doing anything funny, you're dead. Got it? He said, Ike. Yes. As the Korean player led the way, Shizukan's sneer pierced his back, and he said, a man crying like a baby. Then one of his subordinates inquired, Mr. Shizukan, are you really planning to go up against Black Scythe? Isn't it dangerous? Shizukan said, who do you think I am? I'm Shizukan, the leader of the underground. Originally, the plan was to keep the target a secret, but since he had a Korean guide, he had to reveal it. Of course, he kept the part about using his subordinates as bait hidden, mixing some truth with lies, and he said, if I talk to him in Korean, he'll surely have to lower his guard. Then we can strike from behind. One said, the plan is good, but Black Scythe is infamous. Shizukan said, to catch a tiger, you have to enter the tiger's den. If you stay in the well, you'll never get out. A man should live in the big world, don't you think? He said, you're right. Shizukan said, so shut up and trust me. If the plan works, we'll make a big haul. He said, understood. I trust you, boss. Having convinced his subordinates, Shizukan pursued Black Scythe with a sinister smile, unaware of who was following behind them. On the other hand, Heavenly Demon inquired, Mr. An, are we going the right way? The bodyguard replied, yes. Black Scythe went this way. In front of Heavenly Demon was a huge forest. It looked ominous, with a dark aura seeping out. Clearly a dangerous place. And he said, so Black Scythe went in here. The bodyguard said, according to our tracking skill, yes. Heavenly Demon said, but did you see? It seemed like there were others who entered this forest too. The bodyguard said, yes. There seemed to be a group of about 10. They saw players entering the forest in a group. Whether they were allies or enemies was uncertain from the distance, but it was clear they hesitated before entering the forest. Then the bodyguard inquired, could there be others chasing Black Scythe? Heavenly Demon said, considering his famous face and nickname, it wouldn't be strange for him to be pursued. And the problem was, we might encounter others while tracking him. Then he said to himself, are they like me, trying to get a piece of the action from Black Scythe? I would find out if I followed more closely, but if they're foreign players, I'll kill them if necessary. To prepare for such a situation, Heavenly Demon instructed An Sang-keol, and he said, Mr. An, if we encounter foreign players, kill them if the opportunity arises. And Sang-keol inquired, what? Kill them? Heavenly Demon replied, they probably think the same as us. By the rules, we're enemies. The one who strikes first survives. Also, keep your presence detecting skill active, just in case. He said, I understand. The two entered the forest of the labyrinth, unaware that it would be difficult to escape. On the other hand, Ryu said to himself, in the forest of the labyrinth, there resides a boss called the Doppelganger. Its attack power is not that strong, but it's a troublesome opponent. Of course, only for those who are encountering it for the first time. However, Ryu had faced and killed the Doppelganger countless times. It was so weak that he didn't even need to remember how many times he had killed it. Ryu added, with the combo of Crimson Moon and Moonlight Slash, it's an easy target. But Ryu had no intention of killing the Doppelganger himself, and he said to Ju Seong-tak, you should be the one to kill the Doppelganger. Ju Seong-tak inquired, me? Then Ryu instructed Ju Seong-tak, who was following behind him, on the strategy to defeat the Doppelganger. It was a simple strategy, so Ju Seong-tak could easily nod in agreement. Ryu said, got it? Just do as I said, and you'll capture it without any problems. Ju Seong-tak said, yes, don't worry, I won't disappoint you, master. At that moment, a monster appeared before Ryu for the first time. It was a venomous slime, commonly found in the forest of the labyrinth. This was also a sign that they were getting closer to the Doppelganger's habitat. Ryu said, I'll handle this one since I'm giving up the boss. To gain even a little bit of points, Ryu stepped forward with his scythe. He cut it in half before it could spread its venom. Instead, the slime doubled in number. Ryu said, as expected, physical attacks don't work, and the more you cut slimes, the more they multiply. Annoying as it was, Ryu had no choice but to use magic. Holding a scythe in one hand, he generated an electric current with the other. The slime that was directly hit by the electric current burned away without a trace. Slimes were immune to physical attacks but took critical damage from magic attacks. However, no message appeared for killing just one. It was only after killing both that he received any reward. You have killed a venomous slime. EXP plus 0.09%, gold by 300, points 30. Ryu said to himself, even when they multiply, the experience doesn't, and if it were possible, I would have stayed in one spot, splitting slimes to milk the rewards endlessly. Then he said, let's go. We should be there soon. Ju Seong-tak said, yes, master. While killing slimes, Ryu occasionally used his clairvoyance to monitor the pursuing group. The first group he checked on was the Chinese. Ryu said to himself, they're all flustered since tracking and detecting skills don't work here. In fact, once inside the labyrinth, all connections to the outside world are cut off. And if you take the wrong path, all signals will be lost, Ryu added. Looks like they lost the Korean guide and now they're stuck. As if you're not within 5 meters of each other, you can quickly become separated. And since all paths are connected like a cube, you might meet again, but it could take a long time. Ryu said to himself, I need to remember their location. I might need the Chinese's help to catch the doppelganger. Smirking, Ryu shifted his perspective. And it wasn't just the Chinese who were lost and confused. Ma Kyung-rok's group was in the same situation, and An Sang-cheo looked panicked after entering to track Black Scythe, only to lose the signal. Ryu said to himself, you shouldn't follow blindly into unknown places. Despite chiding them, Ryu smiled, satisfied that everything was going according to plan. And he said, but I wonder if Christine is okay. He checked and saw that she was still at the initial location, waiting for the others. As a result, her group of 2 had grown to 10. Ryu said, she seems to think more people mean more safety, but it's useless. The Church of Despair will gather that many forces too. From the perspective of John Delgado, it was clear. He had decided to kill Christine. And while Christine waits for her followers, he gathers his cultists to ambush them. But that would be Ryu's cue to step in, as intervening in a non-threatening situation wouldn't provide a good pretext and would make him look crazy. Ryu said, but first, we need to deal with the doppelganger and get out of here. But suddenly, a thin, high-pitched voice called from beyond the forest. Is anyone there? Please help! Following the sound, they found a woman leaning against a tree, gasping for breath. Seeing Ryu and Ju Seong-tak, the woman brightened, and she said, thanks God, I'm saved. I'm not the only one here. The women added, excuse me, can you help me? I can't get up. I hurt my ankle. Ryu inquired. What happened? She replied. I was attacked by a slime. My foot hurts so much I can't move. Ryu said. Looks like you can't move. She cried and said, It hurts so much. Coldly, Ryu inquired. What do you want me to do? Sensing Ryu's indifferent response, the woman became desperate and said, Please, help me get out of here. I'll do anything. Please, Ryu inquired. Anything? She replied. Yes, anything. I'm embarrassed to say, but if you have desires, I can satisfy them, Ryu said. No need for that. Can you give me all your items? She said. Items? Of course. The woman opened her inventory and pulled out some items. There were a few unique materials and a high-grade magic stone. She said, I'll give you these for now. I'll give you the rest once I'm saved. How about that? Ryu said, Fine. Though he agreed, Ryu didn't even look at the items. He simply approached her with his scythe. The women inquired, What are you? And before she could react, he beheaded her, and her head, with a shocked expression, rolled on the ground. Though it was a sudden killing, Ju Sung-tak remained unfazed, as Ryu had already briefed him that the doppelganger steals the appearance and memories of those it kills to deceive other humans in the labyrinth. It usually pretends to be a slime victim asking for help, then kills you once possessed. Having heard this beforehand, Ju Sung-tak immediately realized the woman was the boss, the doppelganger. Her body disintegrated into powder and vanished, and black smoke rose from the spot where the body had disappeared, forming a human shape. The creature inquired, How did you know? My disguise was perfect. Ryu laughed openly at the creature speaking fluent Korean, and he said, A monster trying to talk to humans. Ridiculous. The creature said, Monster? You humans who invade my territory are the real monsters. Ryu shouted, Shut up and fight, monster scum. The creature said, You have a bad mouth, human. At that moment, a quest window popped up before Ryu. Plus condition, break the doppelganger's trap and face its true form.